2019 was our first year post-merger with S4 Capital. And in that year, I think, we had amazing growth last year, and we also built a lot of new capabilities and service lines within the company. And I think we're really starting to get into a groove with finding the type of marketer for whom our services really appeal. And the way I describe that marketer is it's someone in transition. I think in-housing is a somewhat outdated term in the sense that we don't really look at it as black and white. You either fire every agency or do everything yourself. In fact, I think the reality is most people are going to be somewhere in between. And they're in transition. They're realizing they need new skills, they need new technology, they need new insights. And maybe the way in which they serviced all of that, or they relied on professional services in the past, maybe that's not going to work for them in this era. And those are the marketers that are really waking up and saying, you know what, maybe we need a little bit of MightyHive. And sometimes that looks like a full service annual engagement in which we are working to acquire and activate media for them. In other cases, it's more surgical. I have a specific issue in that I need to redeploy all of my site-side analytics, and I want you to come in and do that better than anybody else. It's working out. We're using a land and expand mode, and that's working very well.
So just go a little bit more deeper on the kinds of services that are in demand and sort of what kind of engagements you're doing.
Mm-hmm. So I think we started out as a media buyer. So our approach to digital media buying was we're going to understand the tech really, really well and harness that technology to make better investments on behalf of our customers. Since then, what we found is if you really push performance media buying to its logical conclusion, you get out of the media buying part of it pretty quickly. And I say that because if you take something like remarketing, the example I use with my team all the time is somebody says, I want you to run a more efficient remarketing campaign for me. It's not necessarily about a new platform. It's not really about, do I have a slightly different message? Oftentimes it's about, have you set up the tagging architecture correctly? Have you really placed your floodlight tags in the right place? Have you thought through the waterfall of how your customer is going to move through that CDJ? And in reality, we found that a lot of the fundamental deployment and architecture work hasn't been done correctly. So we got ourselves into doing that sort of work. There's a lot of demand for kind of laying the groundwork for marketers who now have decided they want to own this technology to have it set up correctly. And once it's set up correctly, then you can talk about using it. So we've seen a huge momentum around redeploying ad servers, setting up enterprise data lakes within new cloud infrastructure. And I think, and I continue to believe that those sorts of projects for us are incredible because we're uniquely qualified to do it. But it's a great way to deliver value to clients. And we find that as long as we keep our eyes on delivering value, then we'll continue to get invited back.
What about the creative piece of things? How do you work with both the brands and their agencies? Because creative is awfully important, and there's all kinds of new demands for creative, particularly around dynamic creative optimization, bespoke and versioning. How does creative fit into what you do or you don't do?
It's a great question, and creative is something that I think, if I'm being honest, for the last few years prior to the merger with S4, creative is something that we did effectively in the sense that we could help a marketer unlock DCO, and we could help them set up the logic for the tagging to make sure that the right choices are made around personalization. But if you talk to most people who understand DCO, the idea of having a slightly different headline or a different color background was really the limitation of what we could do. We're not a creative production company. However, now that we are part of S4, our sister company, Media Monks, has really just broadened what's possible for us. We're rethinking how we can go to market in a sense where now it's not just about, do I have the right background or headline, but knowing all the different audience types that I am liable to advertise to, what message do I need to send them, down to what is the picture, it doesn't include humans, or does it include only objects, how are they oriented, what color scheme. All of that stuff is possible when you're working hand in hand with a creative production company whose own model is just completely revolutionized, dynamic creative. So for us, it's been some of the most exciting work to happen over this last year is sitting down with media monks on common clients and saying, how do we create a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario? We know what the media is, we know what the audience insights are from that media, and we know the performance KPIs. You all know the brand brief and the creative brief, and you all have the ability to produce assets that are fit for format. How do we take these two things together and create something revolutionary? I'd say we're at the very early days of that, but things are looking really positive.
Cool. And finally, the buzz here in CES and the conversations you're having with your clients and prospects that you're pitching and people and colleagues you're speaking to, what are some of the relevant conversations you're having?
Yeah, I think, right now it feels as though there's a lot of concern around the regulatory environment, both in Europe and in the United States, and how that's going to impact the major players in media and tech. And that's yet another level of complexity added to most of our marketers' plates in what is, frankly, an already chaotic environment. And I think there's a lot of concern about how do I prioritize making sure that as a marketer, I am set up to be on the right side of all of these issues. But at the same time, I'm under extreme pressure to contribute to the bottom line. And where should I fall on either side of that? Should I play more fast and loose and aggressive, or should I be more conservative in preparation for how we handle privacy? And I don't think it's an easy thing to navigate, and people are very much looking for advice around that. I feel like over the last few days, that's been a very common conversation. How do I make the right choices? And how do I think long term when the pressures I have as a marketer are very short term and quarterly?